Yeah, right, guys. Just thought I'd say hello. I'm Jack, obviously. Fucking thanks for listening to the show and that, mate. You fucking let me know what you think of it when you're done with it. Fucking send it to a mate. Put it on your Instagram stories. It's probably one of the better ways you can share it with people. Leave a review, mate, if you're listening somewhere where you can leave a review. Otherwise, I'll let you get on with the show, mate. Yeah. Yeah, alright, guys. I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM, and this week we're looking into the ideas and the people behind the EU, which was and is sold to the public as the solution to a lot of problems faced all around the world, especially by scientists as well. We're going to look at what the EU is, who came up with the idea, the answers that EU holds for society, and even take a little look at some of the lies that EU specialists believe to have been perpetrated throughout recent times. What's happening in the dark parts, in the shadows, and can our understanding of it and acceptance of it finally help us conquer the stars themselves? But before we do get into the electric universe theory, let's have a song. This is the Bob James freestyle by Ghostface Killer and Raekwon. So, the electric universe theory seems to be pushed by one scientist. A proper scientist though, innit? Like an actual scientist, not like a scientist. Not that sort of scientist. A proper scientist. A guy that thinks something, right? And sticks with it regardless of what the other scientists are trying to say. You know, when they're saying, oh, you're not a scientist, I'm a scientist, you're not a scientist, you're a scientist, I'm a scientist, you're a scientist. But they say the old scientists are what we at Threshold would consider an actual scientist to be. But they want the actual, what we would say are the actual scientists. They want to say are the scientists. Whereas we know that's not true. That's just, you know, those that live in glass houses and that chucking rocks about and stuff. So that's not really something that we need to worry about so much, really. But it is something that did happen to him, and he seemed to have took it in his stride, to be fair. Now, to oversimplify it, though, it seems like he's just found a different way to observe the known universe and the unknown universe, I guess, and to be able to understand that universe. And that means that some of the dogmatic science that got forced down a lot of children's throats, like a Catholic priest's penis, is completely irrelevant. Well, maybe not irrelevant. Irrelevant's quite a strong word, because it did help us get to this point. So it's irrelevant in the sense of a stepping stone, innit? Like a stepping stone becomes irrelevant once you're on the next stepping stone in the river, unless you're in Takeshi's castle, in which case the next stepping stone and the last stepping stone could be very important, but only to a spectator, realistically. And is that what science is? Am I wrong about science? Is science, instead of science being the new religion, is science just the new spectator sport? But I'm not too sure where we can go with that. I mean, you know, scientist versus scientist, like Robot Wars, to be fair. Robot Wars would be pretty good, though, in the Olympics. I'd love to watch that. And we might get that as fucking cyborgs start to take over. Will the cyborgs and the transhumanists, will they get their own Olympics, or will they be able to compete in ours? It's yet to be seen. But getting back to my little analogy anyway about the stepping stones, there's no point going backwards because we're a stone ahead. And even if you are in Takeshi's castle, to be fair, if you've jumped ahead and fell through the water on the shit stepping stones, then you can't go back anyway because you're out. You know, and there's a little sporting reference. Out. So we got sports in there. But again, like I said last week, I don't want this becoming a sport podcast. We're teetering on the edge of this becoming a sporting show, and I really don't want to go anywhere near it because I don't know what I'm talking about with sports. I know very little about sports. Anyway, but I guess getting back again to the little analogy I was setting up with the stepping stones, it's got to be nice to know that you can go back to that previous stepping stone. So that's all that science should be. We should take science as far as we can go, and then we're like, right, this can't go no further. We'll go back a little bit, because I saw a little opening back there, in between the dominoes in the gym, and I might just slip down there, because I think there's a staircase. I don't think it's just a fence. I think there's actually a staircase there, and you take the staircase, right, in between dominoes in the gym, and you take that to what is now known as electric universe theory. right? Which sounds like it's going to be some weird club. And it kind of is, because there's not many people in there, and the guy that's in charge of it is getting on a bit now. To be honest, I was very surprised that he's still doing talks and interviews. He's not here today or out like that, we don't have that sort of money or anything like that, but he was still about, and in a recent talk that I tried to listen to but got distracted. Anyway, dirty scientists, like the scientists, the types that, refuse to accept that they need to make toothpaste addictive to help with people's teeth, and the scientists that refuse to make healthy foods taste nice. They like to shit all over this, claiming it's not actually a scientific theory because it can't really be proved with maths. But I imagine if people discovered the visible light spectrum, right, and then 100 years later some fella came along and said, yeah, that's all well and good that you've got that there, but it's actually billions of lights that we can't see. Look at this, and then holds up like a fucking chihuahua's eye or something to the other guy's eye, the other scientist's eye, to show that dogs can't see colour because you look through that eye and you can tell, oh yeah, where's all the green gone and that. And then, they can show that we can see colours that dogs can't, so there's got to be things that can see colours that we can't. Using that sort of logic, I mean, scientists probably just regarded the dog eye guy as nothing more than like an early Robert Badella, but he would probably have been onto something. However, I'll be dead honest with you, I don't know if that's actually how it happened. But it is a nice visual, innit? Some well-dressed man getting about with a briefcase full of dog eyes. Various different species of dog's eyes as well. Chihuahuas, like I say, fucking Rottweilers, Dobermans, Bulldogs, every bit of everything, trying to show, look, these dogs, these cannot see green, mate. There's nothing, they can't see green. It's just all grey. All grey. And then someone heard that around the same amount of sort of time and thought, all grey. All grey. Oh, great! That Earl Grey. Earl Grey would be a great name for a cup of tea, and it's because of the dog eye fella, right? We might have the name of Earl Grey as a tea, but again, can't be too sure because this is purely hypothetical at this point. I'm trying to help you understand the electric universe theory. And this guy, so you got to imagine this guy getting about with his briefcase full of dog eyes in it, trying to prove to people that dogs can't see pool balls, so they could probably only play cards if they were ever to start competing with each other in a drinking setting, like in a pub or something. And that could also then explain where we got that famous photograph that person managed to capture of that barman's dog and the other local dogs playing that game of poker. But in the same way that at one point you couldn't measure the unseen light spectrum, right, because we didn't have the dog eyes. Why don't we accept that the current systems of measuring are probably incapable of measuring things we haven't even considered yet? I don't understand that. That's where science seems to lack, in my opinion. I might be wrong. I might have completely misunderstood it all. Again, I keep trying to dabble in science for this, and I'm trying to educate myself. I really am, but I'm struggling. But imagine you're trying to explain something away that you can't see. Like that chemistry between people that want to get romantic, those unseen, unsmellable pheromones that seem to make people want to fuck each other. Now, let's imagine that's the only reason behind that happening, right, is because of the invisible reptilian creatures that have latched onto our spinal cords, and they reckon it's funny to just make the meat puppets fuck each other, and they just laugh about it going, this is fucking weird, isn't it? They're loving it, but they got no idea that I'm holding onto the spine, just going, sucking in all that fucking love juice, and I'm also using them like puppets as well, but we can't see that, innit? But we got to imagine that that's why it happens. We can't see that. We don't know that that's the case. We think it's pheromones, but let's imagine that realistically it's because of the invisible interdimensional creatures, right? Now, we can't see these interdimensional reptilian creatures, and we can't sense them either. But it is a nice, easy, relatable thing to imagine, innit? And now, right, imagine if we're trying to measure this all in some pheromone capturing device, the fucking pheromone monitor, the pheromone monitor, the pheromometer, the pherometer clock, the fem clock, the firm or pherom clock, whatever it's called, right? It don't exist. We don't have to worry about it. But imagine we're measuring the pheromones in the pheromometer, right? And we might get a reading on whatever pheromones are, right? And yeah, they're there, they're doing something. They could be a byproduct of it. But we're completely still unaware of these reptilians that are holding onto our spines, right? It isn't until we go looking for the reptilians that we find them. And that's my biggest problem with science, and I'm hoping that I've managed to get it across to you. Right? Scientists claim it's all about observing the world and documenting it, but it's not. It's all about dick measuring in it and trying to fit in. Like, scientists probably spent their entire school careers on the outskirts of the schoolyard society, innit? The weirdos, the geeks, the nerds. And then, as they get a little bit older, they're finally accepted by other intelligent people, and they probably want to latch onto that, innit? They don't want to lose that, so they'll do everything they can to keep that acceptance, even if it means repeating rhetoric and only spending their lives agreeing with everything the older guy in the lab has been saying to them for the past 10 years, rather than going, I don't believe that, because they've not got the confidence to, or because they're scared that they'll lose that respect of people that they fought so long to get. Anyway, let's have a song. This is The Game, Royce the 5'9", Locksmith, King Crooked, Graph, 3D Nate, Myson and Ransom with the grand finale 2021. It's a bit of a long one. It's going to be quite a metaphor-heavy or analogy-heavy episode this week, guys, so I hope you're ready for that. So I thought what a good way to make sense of the electric universe theory is, imagine a time before people knew about animals that could camouflage themselves, like snakes, right? But they were aware of the effects of snakes, like dots on the ankles where they've been bit, children disappearing, people swelling up and going, I'm burning, oh my god, it's on fire. You know what I'm getting at. Anyway, they know of the effects of snakes, but they don't know of snakes. Not yet. But because nobody knew snakes existed, everyone just says that must be what happens when your inner child leaves the body. They exit through the ankle wound, or these things are caused by the invisible devils, the invisible devils of the woods. But we can't see the invisible devils because they're invisible, so we'll just say that they're all invisible devils. Then, some guy comes along with what locals call a bit of a vicious sock, right? Otherwise known to us, modern day people, as a viper, right? But in this hypothetical world, a viper's never been seen before, because it's camouflaged, isn't it? It's hidden. Now, the viper-wielding guy tells people what's going to happen if the viper bites them. They'll swell up, and they'll say they're burning. But the locals say it's a coincidence, because that's mad. The invisible devils do the same thing. Besides, though, this doesn't explain Tigbiddy Dave's toddler going missing last Tuesday. So the Viper man, he waits, a couple of weeks go by, and the Snake Master, he returns with a big box, and inside that box is a very angry and very, very hungry python, fully grown and all, about 14 foot long and that. And he says, excuse me, love, you seem like a good Catholic woman. How would you like having a bit more food this evening to share amongst you, your husband and your 17 children? To which she replies, oh, that sounds lovely, but I actually have 18 children. Well, madam, and then he would imagine, I would imagine he turns to the audience that have started to gather around due to this massive box rattling and moving around on the floor. I predict that if I take one of your youngest children, say the 2-year-old with the cleft lip, Jean, yeah, little Jean, well, I predict that I can make her vanish and thus explain the disappearances of some of the other young children that have disappeared whilst playing in the woods on their own. So the mum agrees, and the crowd starts to thicken. There's more and more people getting around and gathering, causing a bit of a ring in the middle, like a mosh pit, but without the moshing. So it's a snake pit, if you like, making a snake pit. Then the snake guru places the young, tasty Jean down on the ground near the box and unlatches the lid of the box, the latch on the box that's facing Jean. So you got to imagine we're kind of in modern times almost, but we're still in a time where Catholics have got 20 odd children each, but they've got like Tupperware and big Tupperware at that, but they just don't know what snakes are. Anyway, we're losing the analogy, right? So he opens this box but only at the latch that's facing the little girl Jean, the little girl with the cleft lip from the local village, whose mum we've just met. And a few minutes pass, right? And then the lid starts to lift, and the snake's massive head rises out of the box in that signature sort of fucking S-bend, right? It's ready to fucking go. And then Jean lets out a little giggle. and playfully reaches out for the snake's face to be like, oh, what's this? Because she's never seen one before. She wants to touch it. That's how toddlers learn. They touch things. And at that moment, the snake strikes at Jean's apparently deformed face with a complete disregard for the potential genetic abnormality gripping her face with its own detached jaw. And because obviously, you know, snakes don't discriminate, and neither do we in our storytelling. But then the crowd starts to panic, right? And then the snake quickly displays its ability to be able to crush its prey, the little 2-year-old Jean. After all, you know, Jean had been sharing her meals with another 19 people, and even then sharing her mum's nipple with at least, let's say, 3 other children, and if the local rumours were to be believed, then at least one of the teenagers. And a few minutes pass, right? And the snake begins to devour the meat sack of crushed bones that used to answer to the name Jean. And before long, the child's gone. Now, the discoverer of the scaly creatures takes a moment, right, and bows in front of the audience, claiming that he's concluded this is where our children are going. We never thought to look in the leaves for anything other than leaves. But it turns out this thing was there all along, making our children disappear. In fact, more to the point, the children aren't actually disappearing. And then he stabs the back of the snake's head, right, with his cutlass, and eviscerates the python in front of everyone, and then reaching into the mound of exposed flesh out the snake, pulls out the disfigured, sloppy body of a crushed-up Jean, right, and exclaims to the crowd, See, look, she hasn't disappeared, she's just dead. Flapping her around in the air, you know, proving his point and that, before, you know, dropping her at her mum's feet for the rightful burial rites to be performed. And then after all of this, right, the crowd then say, yes, all right, yeah, that does seem to explain the disappearances of the young children, but it doesn't explain the burning sensations of the dots on the ankles, does it? Like, as an analogy, did that make sense? Because it kind of sounds like a joke with no punchline, and that wasn't my intentions. I'm trying to put it across to you for how people seem to view the people that come up with these new theories. The people that come up with the new theories are the snake, man. They've found the snake. They're like, look at the snake. The snake does all these things that we've been wondering about. But there's different parts. Different snakes do different things. There's different things going on that are causing these different events. It's not all the devils, you know, doing it all. Maybe the devils are still doing little bits of it and doing other things, maybe. But the snake does this bit. I've got an answer to this question here, right? I don't know if that does make sense. What I'm saying, right, is scientists want to find that thing that seems to explain absolutely everything all at once, but what if it's closer to reality for a bit of one thing to explain something and something else to explain something else? In the same way that physics explains how some things work, and at the same time biology explains other things and how they work. Why are they so willing to accept that as a concept? There's physics and biology, right? They'll accept that, but they won't accept another thing. But I haven't even actually told you what electric universe theory is, so let's have a song and then we'll get into that. This is Black Illuminati by Freddie Gibbs. From my understanding, right, of the electric universe theory, it seems to be based on the belief that the most important factor of the universe is electricity. So you've got electromagnetism and gravity, right, working kind of side by side in a way. Now I might be wrong because, fortunately, you know, luckily for me and luckily for everyone, I'm not a scientist, and I'm glad I'm not a scientist because people would just be spitting at my feet as I walk. But if we can have gravity and electromagnetism, right, on Earth, because we can make an electromagnet. You wrap a bit of fucking wire around something and chuck around a spring, and I think, pour a bit of salt water on it, say a prayer next to it and chuck a screw in it, and then the screw floats or something like that. We have that, and we have whatever gravity is, wherever it is that keeps us flat on the ground. We have that as well. So why can't we have both of them existing further afield? Regular cosmology, which I think is the right word, the one there it looks into space, not the one where it just studies stars, and definitely not the one where it tells people oh, I'm a Capricorn. Because I always get the three mixed up because they sound like they all mean the same thing. Especially two of them, which I can't actually remember the words to now. I want to say astrology and I can't remember the other one. But I know there's three and they all seem similar. Either way, regular cosmology believe in this unseeable force, right, called dark matter and dark energy. And they also believe in black holes. Now, I know what you're thinking. We don't need to believe in black holes because somebody photographed a black hole, Jack. But realistically, right, did they? Did they really? How can we know it's a black hole if we've never seen one before? And why does a black hole photograph hold a lot more weight than the Bigfoot photographs? It doesn't make sense to me. Why do we believe in the black holes, these things that suck light out of existence and might be wormholes to another dimension? We believe in those things, but we don't believe in a above average height humanoid that's covered in hair. Woodwolves or Bigfoot, Yetis, Menks. We don't believe in them, but we believe in a black hole. Right? And there's one photograph, as far as I'm aware, of a black hole, yet there's been dozens of photographs and first-hand accounts of Bigfoot, but we don't believe that. It's just weird, isn't it? It doesn't make sense. And I'm surprised, right? I'm honestly surprised that someone didn't photograph something in the sky sooner with one of these fancy telescopes and just say it's a black hole, if I'm honest with you, and just go, look at this. No one's going to know what that is. Let's call it a black hole, and we can prove they exist, and we can prove that we were right to theorise that this thing exists, and now we can go, there's a black hole. That there is a black hole, when realistically, what it could be is some daft cunts poured some glitter down a toilet roll and took a flash photography picture, put the flash on the phone, and took a video down it, and then just took a screenshot of that on the phone, cropped it down a little bit, and gone, there you go, black hole there, mate. Look at that. We're gonna call this black hole. We're gonna call it Shamanandrex. We're gonna call it Shamandrex, just as a little joke at our expense, trying to mock us, mate, with these fucking fake black hole pictures and all that, And this is something that people should fucking get annoyed about, mate. Then all these fake black hole pictures that people are taking using nothing more than fucking what do you want to call it? Like, is it Blue Peter standards of fucking arts and crafts to be able to fucking produce these fake black holes, mate? It's mental that scientists are even allowed to get away with this. But this belief, right, in the unseeable force, it does remind me of other dogmatic people. It reminds me of priests, vicars, imams, rabbis, and even the people that attend the services that are held by all those people, right? They believe in an unseeable force that they can claim to measure using their own standards set out in each of their respective books, their textbooks, if you like. Just like scientists seem to believe that they can measure dark matter by the standards that have been set out in their own books. Yet, the people who believe in Wallace Thornhill's theory, the electric universe, believe that space is filled with electricity, and whilst they can't see it or measure it by standards described in conventional science, he can use his knowledge and his theory to be able to predict problems and events that regular science isn't able to. So surely there's something to it, innit? Now, apparently it lends heavily from a concept known as plasma cosmology, and I did try, not sure. All I got from it, that claims that 99.999% of the universe is made of plasma, right? So that's the sun, and that's like everything's made of the thing that's in blood, I think, is what that means. But I think the electric universe says, rather than it being plasma, that high majority of stuff is electricity. And as you know, there's some flaws from the plasma theory as well that apparently can be better explained by accepting that the apparent emptiness of space is just electricity flowing round. Now, scientists claim that the electric universe is pseudoscience, innit, because the maths isn't really there, right? But it seems, right, that the perpetuators of the theory of the electric universe seem to be of the mindset of making the knowledgeable people less important, if that makes sense. They want to share the knowledge with the masses, and to do that, they've got to make it understandable to the layman. Something that, on the whole, throughout history, religions have always been against. They always keep secret information, don't they? And surprise, surprise, fucking science doesn't like it either. You've got to learn all of this. Oh, you've got to advance to this point to be able to learn that knowledge. Oh, you've got to get to here to learn that. You've got to be able to understand this to understand that. It's no different to fucking religion, mate. No different at all. But personally, right, I've always believed and kind of always been taught that if you can't explain something in the simplest terms and you don't actually have a fucking clue what you're talking about and you're just parroting what you've heard someone else say. Now, there does seem to be another way that a scientist can show the theory has got a bit of weight behind it, a bit of hump, a bit of heft, And that's by showing that it has a bit of a basis, a grounding in the real world, and it's a way to apply it, right, and show physical evidence for it through maybe predicting patterns or events, which is something that Thornhill has been able to do. Apparently countless times, but we're going to count to 4 or 5, right? And supposedly, right, he was able to have knowledge of comets, and I think anyway, from top of me, I think it was the trajectory that they would take because of electricity in the system, which if you didn't count for the electricity, the trajectory of the comets seems almost fantastical and just like, where the fuck's that going and why is that doing this? Oh, it must be hitting something that we can't see, but they won't accept that the thing we can't see is electricity, which is odd. He was able to work out, I think it was the structures of a supernova, which has something to do with, I think, a dying star or the birth of a star. I'm not sure if they're the same thing. I'm not sure if one dies and another is born. Like the moon, when whatever is in the moon comes out of the moon, and then there'll be another moon. If you want to go down that route, which I think is a Buddhist belief or Taoist belief, I can't remember. Anyway, he was able to work out the temperatures of the north and south poles of the planet that all of the rich people of Earth travel to through stargates and worship Saturn, which ties Saturnalia into all of this, which makes it fucking weird. And in kind of, we'll get into that maybe a little bit later if I can remember. He knew of the heliosphere, right? And was able to predict system failures that would occur on NASA spacecraft based on electrical surges in space. And he did this with his own model, based off his expertise in physics, right? So he had an understanding of physics. He took that and he went, nah, I'm not going to look at it that way though. I'm going to put rose-tinted sunglasses on. I'm going to put these red sunglasses on here and not see any of the red stuff. I'm just going to look at the green stuff, or however it is them glasses work that turn things 3D. I can't remember the old glasses that you used to get with the odd video and that. Which is a point. There's a very big side note here, but we used to have 3D videos when I was a kid, 3D VHSs, innit? So why do you need a 3D TV, Because MTVs back then weren't that. They was just on the video. I've never understood that. If it's all in the glasses, then why do you need the special TVs? Anyway, if we want to get conspiratorial though with all of this, we can find a little potential couple red flags in a way that kind of indicate he may have been, or maybe, controlled opposition, right? I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying maybe. Now, he worked for Australia's government, so he's a government worker, and he even worked at IBM for quite a while. I think it was 10 years, 11, 12 years, something like that. And we know that IBM has a history with, should we say, meddling in the affairs of the world and getting themselves involved in everything. And there's always the possibility, in my head, that IBM's the main business of the world leader, or is in fact the world leader, or at least like the big umbrella front for it all. Now, I say he may be controlled opposition because it always seems like there's always some people questioning reality who don't want to accept the reality that's been handed to them. So in order to stop them from actually discovering the truth that the big they have developed, right? So then they make these other avenues of investigation, like little threads for them to follow, In the same way that, you imagine a game, here we go again with a metaphor or whatever this is called, in the same way that a game of bowling, right, you've got the alley, right, and the ball can go down the alley and hit the pins, or it can go down the gutter and the ball comes back to you and you can continue to play the game. but it's still all heading in the right direction, isn't it? Everyone's facing the right way. But then, even if you throw the ball backwards, right, to smash the computer that your mates use to call you fucking Tiny Dick Tony or whatever on the fucking little computer that comes up on the screen up top, you're still inside that bowling alley. No matter what you do, you're within the confines of the bowling alley. And if we imagine bowling alley is the controlled reality, if you like, of the big they that control the reality. I mean, even if you go out into the car park, you think you're out, but you're still on their property. They've still got you. I hope that makes sense for where I was going with that. Anyway, but these other scientists, right, maybe they just exist to help scratch the itch of inquisitive people. And it's just enough of a scratch, right, to go, yeah, that makes sense now. That makes a lot more sense. But personally, I don't know if I believe in any of it, mate. And that probably comes across. This is the 57th show. So it probably comes across that I don't really believe any of it at all. But this is more about trying to educate you on a Wednesday lunchtime, not about my thoughts and opinions. And I can tell you this, though, to the best of my knowledge, right, I'm not controlled opposition. So you can believe what I'm saying, right? I need you to know that. Now, these things at Wall Thornhill, it's always an odd name to say, I don't know, I'm struggling with Thornhill. It doesn't matter that I wrote it in chicken scratch here and it looks like it says Thornhill. But either way, Wallace Thornhill, he managed to predict a lot of stuff, as I said, 4 or 5 things, the supernovas and such. And that seemed to fucking flummox a lot of scientists, and some of them have even gone on record as saying, yeah, we were taken aback by that, and it made some of them stop and take note of what he was saying. Not physically, though, as he was, turned down by a lot of scientific journals, so they wouldn't actually share his notes because he was reading from a different hymn sheet, to the rest of the parishioners in the laboratory. So he wasn't fully accepted, but he was a little bit here and there. Anyway, let's have a song. This is Manufacturing Consent by Jedi Mind Tricks. Just a minute, guys. I just wanted a little calm advert for you, a little calmer advert. And if you're like me, a pseudo-intellectual, what you might enjoy are my books. You've got Uneducated Guesses, where I found a load of big words I don't know the meaning to, and then tried to work out what they mean by breaking down the syllables and drew an illustration for each one. You've got How to Date an Antique Table, A Lover's Guide, which is a book that will tell you how to get your end away with an antique table, complete with how to find an antique table, where to take an antique table on a date, like you could take it dogging, you could take it to the cinema, you could take it for a picnic, and some chat-up lines as well, like, I know I'm drunk, but you look absolutely canted. And even then you got some pictures in the back of some of my taxidermy and that as well. And you've got my third book, More You Know, which is a book of very well-researched fake facts. Just a book of lies, basically. And some of them were suggested, as in topic-wise, were suggested by some of the people from TikTok. So you might, even if you took part in that, you might even have your username on the first couple pages of that book. Anyway, if you, like I say, if you're enjoying these, you might like the books. And you can get access to the books through Patreon or through my website. Or fucking let you crack on with the show, guys. There are some flaws with the EU, though. Now, it doesn't have an explanation for where the universe came from, and seems to completely disregard the Big Bang somehow. I'm not too sure, I can't really remember, and I haven't made proper notes on it. And my notes on this week don't really make a hell of a lot of sense anyway, but that's not the only thing that it doesn't explain. There's no explanation as to where all this electricity has come from either. And now with fusion, for the suns and stuff, we supposedly have an explanation where the power and heat in the universe comes from. It comes from the stars and I think it's the ionization of different things reacting with each other in the suns that make heat and gravity, magnetism, blah blah blah, all the extra fucking buzzwords that scientists love to use to try and confuse us. And it's worked. Look at me, I've not got a clue what I'm going on about here now that I'm going off fucking away from me notes. But I would guess, right, if you was to pull that thread hard enough, that belief and understanding of fusion and fusion in space, right, if you did pull that thread hard enough, scientists probably don't know where it came from in the very beginning. All of the stuff used for it probably not got an explanation. They got the Big Bang, no real explanation for before the Big Bang. Now, my understanding of the Big Bang, right, is that the Church of Science needed something to say where existence came from. But I would argue That's all part of the problem, innit? I'm starting to think that the linear way of thinking is the very thought prison that we're trapped inside of. Surely, right, if you just say that the universe has always existed and will continue to exist, then you don't need to worry about it. You don't have to think of a start, because then there's no start, there's no end. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have a start and an end, yeah, sure, I'm sure we do. But that's a very hard thing to define, and a lot of that comes down to spirituality and things like that as well. We don't know when we start, we don't know the beginning of us, is it? You know, if we knew that, then abortion would be easier across the board, you know. You wouldn't have to, you know, resort to doing mad stuff to get rid of kids in certain parts of America and that. You know, like sending them off to the army and stuff. But you could say, like I say, that it never started and it'll never end. It's not linear. It's just there, and it'll always be there. It might change. What it is might change. It might evolve over time. It might not be what we see now if we're going to use time as a measuring device. 20 billion years from now, the universe probably won't look like what it looks like now and won't be made up of the same stuff of what it's made up as now. But it's still the universe, because day in, day out, it's been the universe, but it's changed. I don't know if that makes sense, and this is where my problem with some of science comes from. I really wanted to try and get it across to you this week with this, because it seems to come up a lot, and I thought this might be a nice little way to vent some of it and get it out. And I said time there as a measuring device. We invented time, yet we use it to measure something that we don't understand, can't control, and you know, we don't understand time itself. Like, oh, it's this amount of time to this, and it's just a way to describe something. It's an adverb of reality, really. That's all that time really is, and that should probably be a fucking poster, mate, with my face on it there. Time is the adverb of reality, right? That's going to be on memes, mate, in the future. That is going to be, you know, in like 30 years' time, right? When I'm in one of them nice little rooms with one of them coats that latch around you a few times and keep you warm. That's going to be on posters, and people are going to be like, who said this? And then they'll show pictures of me in the paper and what I used to make out of rats back now. And they'll be like, oh, it's a shame, innit? It's a shame. We can't believe a word he said because he's poorly. But still, like, back to time, we don't understand it. We just use it as a way to describe things. And many of us don't even seem to understand what time means either. We just see it as minutes or whatever, seconds. But it is just a measuring tool, in the same way that a centimetre doesn't exist. Neither do minutes or millennia. And I've always wondered what would happen if we never had time. Not as in like we're rushing around everywhere, trying to get here, there and everywhere because, you know, we've planned our day poorly. I'm sure we could still plan to a degree without the concept of time. But by getting rid of that very concept, I've always imagined that God becomes pointless, innit? We can't argue about when he existed, if he was knocking about in a human form, corporeal form. We can't argue about when we were made. We can't argue about the dinosaurs or when the dinosaurs were, when the dinosaurs died out. We can't argue about the existence of dinosaurs because we've not got God getting in the way because we've got the measurement of time. And while we're talking about dinosaurs as well, why don't we measure time in height? Loosely dinosaurs, geology. And because the Earth gets taller in it as time goes by. And I really don't understand how. But you would think that we would measure time by height to some degree. Because land gets higher and higher as time goes by, whatever time is. But that's probably a worry for another show. One thing described as a flaw, getting back into the electric universe theory, it's how the theory describes the mysteries of galaxies on a larger scale, right? And they look at that and go, yep, that's fine. It explains the mysteries of the galaxies on a large scale. That's good. Not quite the flaw that I was about to say. But what makes it a flaw is it doesn't account for stars and our knowledge of stars at the minute. Now, we know that stars aren't electrical, even though they do seem to form a type of electricity to a degree. Again, the main problem that is that this fits in really nicely with current existing theories, and it's almost like the people in charge of the textbooks don't want people to know everything that they could know. They just want them to know little bits, enough to not be able to understand. So where stars are concerned, there are said to be stars, I think they believe all of the stars are powered externally by electricity, like there's a little generator floating around out there somewhere and someone runs around plugging it in and all this. And I think what that actually means, though, is that from my understanding and looking at the diagrams and the videos I watched and stuff, again, it's gone over my head, I think, but the sun produces these arcs of energy, and at the highest point of these arcs, the arcs change colour, and apparently they said that's the strongest point of the arc, where it's the fucking most reactive or the most powerful part, where it gives off the most heat or radiation or whatever, and then that sort of snaps back in. And that seems to be the external bit that helps to power the stars, which are just a ball of fucking gaseous nuclear bomb that's forever looming over our heads if we do want to believe scientists. It just seems like another way to fucking scare people when you think of it like that. And it does make sense, though. That kind of does make sense. The two of them, the two theories together, regular theory, electric universe theory, combined, help explain the sun. Because if you look at an oven, go in your kitchen and look at your oven, right? If you've got a gas-powered oven, that oven's not going to work without the spark that ignites it. Otherwise, it just kills a family slowly through the night, like, and makes everything in the house look all fucking wavy like a desert. Now, I have written down here cosmic electrical fire, and again, for the life of me, I can't remember why. This has really frazzled my brain, all this. So I advise Googling that and taking a look to see what that's got to do with the electric universe theory, because I can't remember. Maybe it might come back to me later on. We'll try. I will give it a go. But I've just remembered that earlier near the start of the show, when I was listing the things that Thornhill predicted and discovered, I mentioned the heliosphere earlier on with that as if it was a fucking normal thing to say, and I hadn't heard of it before, and I had to look it up. So to explain it to you, if you can't, if you can break down words and you've played Fallout New Vegas, you can probably work it out what it is. But in case you can't, it's this sphere of radiation that gets emitted by our sun and apparently most stars, if not all stars, in a certain age range. And it sort of protects the inner solar system from electromagnetism, I think, which without that would make Earth uninhabitable. Except Earth also has its own shield, which the other planets apparently don't have. So could it be that the machines placed around the Earth that Scientologists go on about, or the perception filters that we discuss on this show that were put there by the Greys, maybe they're around the Earth to protect the Earth, right? To protect it from the sun, from the electricity in the universe or whatever, to contain us, to protect us in a way. Maybe the fact that it changes our perception or restricts our movement on here and restricts our brains is just a side effect that we've just got to put up with. And maybe, right, we believe the universe is constantly expanding because these things around the Earth, right, these machines are nothing more than intergalactic bubble wrap, right, protecting us whilst we're being delivered across the star systems. Just as a thought. Now, I'm going to be dead honest, guys. I am in way over my head with this stuff this week, and it's really hard to get my head around, and I am struggling. But I'm hoping that I've put it across to you in a way that is helpful or useful, or at least made you interested in going to look into it. Now, it seems to understand this theory, right? You need to have a pretty good grasp on physics to begin with, which I don't. Because they seem to be two sides of the same coin, innit? Two footy teams on Derby Day. Without one, the coin's voided and it won't get minted, and without the other team, the match can't be played. But like a football match, though, both sides want to win, innit? And I'm just not sure why. Again, it's not becoming a sports show. I don't want to less of this sports talk in it, but I don't know why the two sides of science are fighting each other and why one needs to win over the other. From what I read, it sounds like Wallace Thornhill was able to use his theory and has continued to expand on it, and in more recent years, he seems to be getting his work accepted a little more, but it doesn't really seem to be going anywhere, but maybe I'm wrong because I had to use DuckDuckGo to look this stuff up. When I went on Google, it was just all stuff trying to debunk it rather than giving the other stuff, and Google's starting to do that with a lot of stuff now, which is a bit, I think, suspicious, because it's trying to show you, no, don't think of that, think of this, and then it shows you all of the other stuff, even though, when I went looking through stuff, it does seem to be that these theories are being accepted by some scientists and bigger communities of scientists, but Google seemed to want, for the first 3 pages or so on Google, wanted you to believe that none of it's true, none of it's real. It's cause, and to further that point, it gets referred to a lot as the flat Earth theory of physics, and I do kind of understand why, because whether the world's flat or it is pear-shaped, it doesn't really matter, innit? It just means that someone somewhere is lying, and that's realistically all that means. The world carries on, nothing changes, and just like with this, no matter what you believe, nothing really changes from our perspective anyway. Most of us are never going to leave the planet, so we'll never be able to take advantage of the knowledge. And what I do find interesting, though, is that it still leans quite heavily on existing theories and belief structures. For example, space being real, right? And the universe being exactly as it's described, except they just find a different way to categorise it, but it's still the universe, but it's a different thing. But every TV show, right, for the past 10 years or so seems to be trying to slowly convince us of this idea of a multiverse, but what if it's neither? After all the reading I did on this, I was just left thinking that the universe isn't a single thing. I think it's probably lots of things all taking up the same space. If you want to use sci-fi terms, right, we'll go with, to make it simple, time and space, right? Time's one half, space being the other half. And they're independent of each other, but they work alongside each other without interfering with each other, passing through what seems to be the same visible space. But in the same way that, you want to say, like, fucking your TV remote, when you fire that, doesn't disrupt the Wi-Fi signal that's bouncing around the room. They can both exist in the same spot. Like, imagine 2 footballs, keeping it, because we keep bringing up fucking sport. You got 2 footballs in the exact same spot, not on top of each other or beside each other, but in the exact same spot, right? I think that's the best explanation of the universe. They can both move in different directions in there, spinning in different ways and going all around like a gyroscope within itself, but it's actually taking up the exact same spot. But they're somehow connected. Just like the electric universe theory and mainstream science occupy the same space. As, potential lies, but perpetuated to stop us from realising whatever the truth actually is. Just, another 2 tools to turn people against each other in a couple 100 years when future scholars decide to study the books that will get left over from our time. But maybe that's all it is. Just another one that's, alright, you can have them truths, but we won't give it you all. Anyway, that's all I've got for you, so I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for listening, man. If you enjoyed the show, you should probably go and try Truth Seeking. That's TROOF, Seeking, as in like SEEKING, not like a fucking type of helicopter. But it's me and Jimmy Budd, a comedian from the UK, from England, like me. Don't know why I'm saying it like that. Either way, though, go and fucking have a listen. You can find 1 or 2 in the feed for this. There's the Crop Duster, but there's should be by the point you're listening to this, at least 15 episodes going out for Truth Seeking. So you might enjoy that, mate, and fucking leave a review on here and that. Leave a comment if you've watched it on YouTube, and if you do have YouTube as well, you can actually watch some of these. You can have them playing on a loop with my cartoon playing on a loop whilst you listen to 4 or 5 episodes of it. So, maybe throw that on at night time or something, because that might help as well, because that might mean I can eventually monetize my YouTube. Anyway, fucking thanks for listening, man. I'll see you in a bit.